Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Shed the Habits That Hold You Back, brought to you by your Vanderbilt Alumni Association. I'm Sarah Whitney Anderson, Assistant Director of Alumni and Student Engagement, and I'm so glad you could join us from wherever you are this afternoon. Today's webinar will last around 45 minutes with time at the end for questions. Please feel free to type those questions as you have them in the box on the side panel of your screen throughout the presentation. And we will make sure these are addressed in some way before our time is up. We will record today's webinar and post on the Expert Advice webpage on VU Connect. We will also share the recording with you via email. Many of you are excited about our alumni host today from Vanderbilt, and I'm so excited she's here with us for this presentation. Rebecca Quigley is the founder of Q&A Leadership Coaching for Women, a boutique firm dedicated to helping females rise and thrive in their organizations. Having worked for 2 decades in management consulting and information technology, primarily male-driven corporate cultures, she understands the challenges, political atmosphere, and cultural nuances of large organizations struggling to fully embrace diversity and inclusion. As a management consultant, she has been witness to best practices in avoiding failures at some of the world's largest corporations, federal government agencies, and healthcare conglomerates. Rebecca emphasizes with women looking for their great work to be recognized, the ability to break glass ceilings and find talented mentors. A dynamic coach and facilitator, she has deep expertise in team development, emotional intelligence, and personal effectiveness. Her optimistic attitude, warmth, and intuitive style help clients achieve remarkable results, including a clearer vision, greater work-life balance, and enhanced leadership. I'm so excited to turn this over to Rebecca now.
Thank you so much, Sarah Whitney. I'm really excited to be here today. So pay close attention as the next slide evolves. Can you relate to this advice? Does it resonate, and what feelings emerge for you? Use the chat box and in 1 or 2 words, tell me what this brings up for you. And Sarah Whitney, you'll let me know what folks are saying.
Will do. We've got confusion, frustration, anger, unsure what to do, pressure, more frustration, more anger. More confusion.
Yeah. So the sheer amount of advice and the fact that women receive so many contradicting messages often leads us to 2 internal questions. First, am I enough to be successful? And second, how can I be my authentic self at work? And here is the catch. When women feel like they're on shaky ground, they lean into the habits that serve them well. Our meticulous work, being amiable and easy, heightened radar and detailed processing, staying out of the way, and letting our great work speak for itself. Our organizational culture has evolved tremendously in the past 2 decades. Today, we have data and language for gender bias, equity, inclusion in the workplace. But we still have a long way to go. And in many ways, Generation X and the millennials together have been pioneers. Here's the secret to changing our workplace. We don't need to wait for institutional change. And in my opinion, we can't. If you do your personal work and we shed our habits that hold us back, it will create a shift. It will help you rise and thrive personally. and then we collectively can create a ripple effect that will support our teams, support women at all levels within our organization, and even support our daughters and the next generation. I want to address what's been going on because our world has, well, we're living in unprecedented times. Some days all we can do is just get the bare minimum accomplished, and there's a lot of fear. So when our sympathetic nervous systems, our fight or flight, is triggered, we lean into what we know. So we go back to our standard operating instructions. That kind of amygdala, the hippocampus, our emotional brain, and our memory center kicks in way before our prefrontal cortex. And we do what makes us feel safe, which means that we lean into our strengths and they shine, but also our weak areas also take the spotlight. These are hard times, and this is just where we are. There's actually more though. When we lose our normal, we find gratitude for what we do have. And we suddenly find that there's more clarity on what is important and what we can let go. We can use this gratitude and this clarity as we look at the 6 habits. As you move to the next hour, I encourage you to let go of the fear, even just for a couple moments. Try your best to stay present and consider letting go of the habits that are not serving you. So here is how we're going to start letting go of the habits and mixed messages that keep us stuck. First, I'm going to shed light on our genetic wiring, our cultural conditioning, and what's going on in our present day workplace. We're going to look at each habit for all the value it brings you, and then unpack the dark side of the habit. For the next hour, we're going to take on a growth mindset. Hopefully you'll use this beyond the next hour and remain curious. Challenge yourself to stay in a place of discovery. Keep your heart and your head open and try to see your habits through a completely new lens. Finally, for each habit, I'm going to share 3 steps you can take. They are reflections and experiments. They're approachable, and they're really designed for you to start using now, this afternoon. Okay, so let's talk about how we got here. Let's take a couple of minutes to acknowledge some of the why females operate the way that we do. Today, we understand through neuroscientific research and brain scans that women are wired for order, harmony, and empathy. If we reflect on thousands of generations, all the way up to the 20th century, women are most successful in supporting, nurturing roles across all socioeconomic classes. We were rewarded for keeping our mouths quiet, our heads down, running a domestic tight ship. And through modern science, we understand that these winning traits are carried through our DNA across generations. As little girls, we were rewarded for our meticulous work, for helping teachers keep the room quiet with a reserved, obedient demeanor. In contrast, the boys, fidgety, loud, off task, were given seats next to the teacher and special jobs to keep them busy. They were given a seat next to the leader while the girls continued to quietly do their work. Even today, this classroom model has not changed significantly. As we moved into the 1970s, 80s, and 90s, the culture started to significantly shift. For the first time, 50%, it's actually way over 50% now, of college grads were women and females. And they're seen at all levels of our organizations. We were told you can do it all. The caveat, we knew we were equal and powerful. We knew we were equal and powerful, but none of the institutions had changed, and systemic gender bias remained at both work and in our households. In addition, as technology rapidly increased, we started to be able to do less, to do more in less time. Social media added a pressured veneer of having to do it all with a winning smile. And for the most part, men have not needed to shift. Full-time working mothers continue to do over 80% of domestic work, even if they outrank their partner. We were told to lean in and speak up, but when executed, this surprised male and female leaders alike. So how do we approach this work? This work can bring up a lot of emotion. So we're going to layer in a ton of self-compassion as we walk through the habits. Our wiring, conditioning, and organizational culture are flawed and they're frustrating. Today, we're going to focus on the changes that we can personally control. Anger, shame, and blame keep us resistant and stuck. I also want to acknowledge that we bring our whole selves to work. And according to the latest scientific research, women do this more than men. The data from brain scans show significant difference in men's ability to compartmentalize and women's brain multitasking. So when we bring our whole selves to work, we bring our gender, our culture, our home experiences, our childhood experiences. The idea that we should or could leave a part of us at home is really a farce. That's why we need to adopt a growth mindset. We need to stay curious observers. Change starts with new self-awareness. I'm going to say that one more time. Change starts with new self-awareness. The better we know our strengths and the habits that keep us stuck, the faster we can compassionately acknowledge them and create a path forward. So let's take a poll. How have you been managing your behavior in order to fit into an imperfect organization? Which habit brought you here today?
So we have 25% with the perfection trap, 42% the disease to please, 0% for ruminating, minimizing, and apologizing, 16% avoiding difficult conversations, and 16% expecting others to notice and reward your achievement.
Awesome. Great. Let's get into it. Let's get started. Yep. Sarah, I'm having trouble moving forward.
It looks like you're clicking on a dialog box, so click on the presentation.
Yep.
Try again. Okay, what if you move down and do the, okay, there it goes.
I wonder if I can get that dialog box out of here. Sorry. There we go. Okay, here we go. So I chose these 6 habits because I see them most often in my practice. And the
Hey, Rebecca, I'm so sorry, but there's a bigger dialog box that just popped up now.
All sorts of, okay, here we go. Are we good now? Thanks for the heads up, Lord.
Yes, you're great. No worries.
Okay. So I chose these 6 habits because I see them most often in my practice, and the experts on female leadership write about these habits the most. Okay, here we go. There we go. So we've looked at our wiring, conditioning, and culture and how they strengthen the habits. And here they are. To unpack each habit, we're going to follow these steps. We're going to acknowledge that the habit serves you. So we're going to acknowledge that the habit actually serves you. Like, what value does it bring you? Then we're going to unpack what it costs you. And then finally, we're going to introduce reflections and experiments that will help release your grip on the habit. So let's get started. Okay, the perfection trap. So mental models are frameworks consisting of our underlying assumptions from socialization, values, beliefs, education, experience. Mental models help us organize information, and they influence not only our leadership reasoning and behavior, but also our organizational outcomes. So what is the mental model of habit number 1, the perfection trap? Perfectionists tightly grip their fear of failure, disappointing others, and negative feedback. So let's look at the benefits, the value first. And I'm going to tell you some stories. These stories are true stories, actual clients of mine, and hopefully they illustrate what the perfection trap, both the value and the cost of it. So Vicki is an actual client of mine, a perfectionist, and she's had incredible success. She was valedictorian, and she works for a leading consulting firm. As an individual performer, she was rewarded for the quality of her work and was promoted way ahead of her peers. But when Vicki became a director, she was given a team of 8 to lead. Soon after, her results started to soften, and her team was not meeting their quarterly targets. Her team became frustrated, and she started to lose confidence. What was going on? Emerging leaders and executives start to feel the pain of the perfection trap because they need to take risks to run teams. With impossibly high standards for self and others, the perfection trap had Vicki procrastinating, moving slowly, and getting stuck. Her team's inertia slowed. She only took on projects that were clear wins, and by playing it safe all the time, she often missed her numbers. In addition, she tended to micromanage her team, which eroded their trust, self-confidence, and their desire to work. Vicki became anxious at work, and her imposter syndrome started to kick in. So how can you release the perfection trap? First, I like to experiment with good enough. Perfectionists often submit 150% of what is required to get the job done. The research tells us that men are less apt to get stuck in the perfection trap and are confident submitting work when it is good enough. The ripple effect on male-female production, promotion, and organizational visibility is staggering. I'm going to say that again. The ripple effect on male and female production, promotion, and visibility is staggering. We need to start a practice of curiosity first. Ask yourself, is this good enough? Could I submit it sooner if I let go of some of the less important details? Can I release the grip on my team's work? Can their work be good enough? Where can I prioritize good enough, and where can I allow for perfection? Second, women that get stuck in the perfection trap often do not raise their hands unless they have the perfect solution. This means there are less female, less diversified ideas in your organizations. I'm going to say that again. There are less female ideas in your organization if women are holding back and not taking risks and not raising their hands. Start small. Start in a low-risk meeting and increase your experiments to taking on new projects that are riskier than others. Start raising your hand in a low-risk meeting. Start small. It's okay to be wrong. It's okay to fail. Negative feedback helps you grow, and only you can let it permanently affect you. Negative feedback, say it one more time, it helps you grow, and only you can let that feedback permanently affect you. 3, perfect the process. If you are incredibly product-oriented, always focused on delivering that perfect product, I'd like to suggest that you lean into the process. With Vicki, we learned that she had a vision of perfect in her head that she struggled to release, and she gripped that perfect vision so tightly that she often rejected other great ideas. She's now experimenting with creating a more iterative process that includes team input, delegation, and risk-taking. So she's perfecting that process, adding that risk-taking in, adding in team input, adding in delegation. Her products are actually improving. She's getting them in on time, and her team is rebuilding trust. Okay. So trying to be a perfect person is a trap, but trying to be the wonderful, easy breezy pleaser is as well. Pleasing gives women the opportunity to use the nurturing and intuitive strengths that they have developed over millennia of evolution, and on which most families depend. So here's that wiring kicking in strong. Peggy is another one of my clients. She spent the first 20 years of her career in support of others. She became the go-to person for her boss, her peers, everyone else, her family. She rose. She rose within her career at multiple organizations by listening, solving others' problems, fixing them, and showing up for every single need. When she was promoted to associate dean at one of the nation's premier universities and put in charge of multiple people and tens of projects, she began to hit the bumps. She felt like she had 5 jobs, and she felt like she was running into the ground. The need seemed never ending, and she felt the guilt of never doing enough. Some of her staff felt marginalized and viewed her as always swooping in to do their jobs. And she enabled other team members to actually do nothing by doing it all herself, which made the team completely dysfunctional. She started to be resentful, and then the guilt and anxiety grew stronger. When I started to work with Peggy, she also had a 0 inbox policy, but she was driven by answering everything as it came in. She had no sense of her priorities, only the priorities of others, and every single small task was the most important. Just responding to those around her was consuming her. It was a silent suffering, and she felt trapped in her habit, but she was terrified to let it go. So let's look at how we can tackle this. Prioritizing big and small rocks was the first experiment we tackled. Every morning and every night, Peggy stack ranked her work priorities. She realized that even the immediacy of responding to every email was sucking almost 90 minutes of her day. And she was so resistant to this at first that we had to actually, to this prioritization, that we had to actually revisit her roles and responsibilities in her job description to refresh her on the importance of her leadership role. She was not an individual performer anymore. She had team members to support her. She realized that she had to make no a complete sentence, and she had to stop raising her hand any time someone needed something. There were other people able. Swooping in is a disservice. Delegating is nurturing behavior. I'm going to say that one more time because it's profound to pleasers usually. Swooping in is a disservice. Delegating is nurturing behavior. As a senior leader, Peggy needed to give others the chance to flourish and grow, to feel their way and make mistakes. When she reframed this as hurtful and not helpful, she started to let go of others' work and her team started to heal. The other thing is that I tell parents this. I mean, this is how we parent, right? We let our kids fall and get up and fall and get up, especially, I mean, if you go down to like, you know, the toddler and learning to walk, the very basics. If we swoop in every time, our kids never develop that grit and growth. So delegating is nurturing behavior. Care personally and challenge directly. Great leaders do both. Poor leaders do one or the other. Upper management does not trust leaders that cannot challenge their teams, their peers, and those above them. I'm going to say that again. Upper management does not trust leaders that cannot challenge their teams, peers, and those above them. Peggy had a fear of being gossiped about, of not being liked, and she had not only had trouble saying no, but she was also afraid to give authentic feedback. People started talking about her. Her leadership was starting to wonder if she was strong enough to move forward. So we started an intentional practice of testing where she was on any given moment on the spectrum of caring personally and challenging directly. Ruminating. There is no greater time suck for women than rumination. Whew. Leading researchers believe that women are predisposed to ruminating because of the high value they place on relationships. While their attentiveness to others can be a source of strength, it can also lead women to devote an inordinate amount of time to processing often ambiguous content. Simple exchanges, scouring chance observations, all for potential meaning. Rumination is a real killer for female leaders. It keeps the most brilliant and talented women stuck. I see this all the time in my practice. It can destroy you at the executive level where you need to seem and be confident and decisive. At that level, you are most often around men that move on. So it inhibits action. It creates imposter syndrome. It creates anxiety, fear, and guilt. It undermines your decision making. And at that level, the leadership level, men move on. So if you're looking for more time to be strategic and creative, or even more time to be with your loved ones, the key is to get present and choke out the ruminating habit. So Dr. Susan Nolan, the leading researcher on rumination, says the most effective tools for reducing rumination are interruption and distraction. My client Allison spent a week ruminating over an interaction with a peer on her leadership team. For 7 days, she could not stop thinking about the interaction. Then she found out that he had actually snapped at her because his wife had been diagnosed with breast cancer. It had nothing to do with her. How much time had she wasted? She guessed when I asked her, close to an hour a day and many hours of sleep over that week. She mentioned that she even felt spacey during meetings and family interactions. That one encounter, and we have hundreds of encounters a week, the time loss is staggering for women. And when you think about it collectively across women, we start to lose our power. Here are 3 exercises. First, is it about me? When you feel yourself heading down a rabbit hole in a meeting or alone in your cube or office, pause, interrupt yourself. Ask yourself, is this about me? 95% of what women ruminate over is a guessing game. Questions that often stem from the perfection trap and the need to be liked, the pleasers. In Allison's case, it had nothing to do with her. Interrupt, distract yourself, and move on. It's most often not about you. So the truth versus my thoughts. Another pause. Interrupt yourself. Take a deep breath. Ask yourself, what is the truth and where are my thoughts headed? Pursue the truth. In Allison's case, she could have reached out to her coworker and asked him directly. Instead, she started to make up elaborate stories in her head that took away time from her work and her family. Pursue the truth. And then write and let go. Another pause. If you're deeply in it and you can't stop ruminating, set a timer for 3 minutes, for 5 minutes, grab a pen, write down all that you're thinking and feeling. Release it to paper, dump it on that paper, and then fold that paper over and write, to be productive and strategic, to be creative, I need to move on now. So fold it over and write, to be productive, strategic, and creative, I need to move on now. And then put it away or rip it up if you need to, but let those words burn and move on. Okay. Habit 4, avoiding difficult conversations. So pleasers avoid conflict because of their need to be liked, and perfectionists avoid conflict because they are deeply uncomfortable with failing and being wrong. So it's often painful for them to be direct with others about their mistakes. Here's the deal. Real growth, whether it's personal, professional, or organizational, most often comes from making mistakes and learning from failure. Real growth comes from making mistakes and learning from failure. When you fail to engage in difficult conversations, when you avoid them, you, your team, your boss, you lose the opportunity to grow. And that's personal growth and also growth together. So Kim Scott is the leading expert in this area and wrote a book that I love called Radical Candor. And she coined the phrase, care personally and challenge directly, which you've already heard me say. We need to do both to grow. Women are wired and conditioned to care personally, but they are often never trained to challenge directly. And this holds us back at work. A leader that never challenges her team, her peers, or her leadership comes off as inauthentic and weak. I also see deep resentment and anger from subordinates who are looking for honest feedback, not just strengths, but gaps in their performance. And finally, when you're afraid to speak up, to be direct, you're telling those around you it's not safe to challenge ideas or people to find the best outcome. This avoidance models that and can crush innovation, your team, and your career. So one of my clients is named Inga, and she could fight for the program that she led, but when it came to advocating for herself or challenging others' decisions, she completely clammed up. This often left her feeling resentful and angry at her colleagues, even though they had not done anything malicious or at her. Her fear of being emotional really got the best of her, and so she always bit her tongue. She started getting run over by her peers, and she started getting looked over for a promotion, but she didn't understand why. So when we started working together, in order to take the fear of the emotional out of avoiding or out of the difficult conversation, we looked at the Center for Creative Leadership, and they developed a technique called situation behavior impact. Basically, this technique forces you to describe what you saw a person do and what the impact was as a result. And this prevents you from passing judgment or making assertions that seem arrogant or fall prey to the fundamental attribution area. So that fundamental attribution error. So you're not, attacking the person personally. For Inga, she needed to release her feelings and get to the facts. And situation behavior impact helps you get to the facts. So here's how you would say it. Bob, here is the situation. If we go in this direction, and then you state the behavior, we could derail production or miss our Q3 targets. So situation behavior impact. The 48-hour rule. The best leaders give feedback and deal with problems directly in real time. Waiting for patterns to arise for the biannual review, it's a huge mistake. It is something that, or culturally we've created over time, and we've got, this is like a great undoing, I believe, is getting to this 48-hour rule. We need to start practicing giving feedback immediately. So use situation behavior impact and address your needs within 48 hours. Do not wait for patterns. Do not wait for annual reviews or biannual reviews. And guess what? This also resolves rumination and worry. So get to it. And then the 80-20 rule. So I challenge Inga to check her balance on being candid and speaking directly. And a good rule is that your positive feedback should make up 80% of your comments on your team. Being constructive and having kind of more difficult conversations should be around 20% of the time. So let me say it again, positive feedback, 80%, and then constructive feedback, 20%. It's gonna feel a lot better to give the constructive feedback if you're constantly catching people doing well. So catch the positive, say it out loud, and then when you do need to challenge someone directly or have a difficult conversation or give constructive feedback, it just doesn't feel that hard. Inga actually announced this plan to her team because she was really nervous about it, and she knew that she was either not giving feedback at all or only giving positive feedback. So it helped her feel comfortable with this shift, and her team actually adjusted really quickly to the new model. Minimizing and apologizing. So this is one of the most learned behaviors we have from our mothers or teachers and even from the school playground. Someone says, wow, great work. And the woman or the girl often says, oh, it was all, these people, or it was all my team. Or a dear friend says, wow, you look great. And the woman says, oh, this old thing? Oh, or, oh, I showered. I know most of us can relate to this. So women use minimizing and apologizing language to disarm others and appear humble. We believe we're creating connection and letting go of arrogance, but really we're just giving away our power. And it's not just our language. We do this with our bodies, our voices, our presence. It's pretty powerful. So in her book, How Women Rise, which I love, Sally Helgeson is an executive coach, and she tells a story of observing the women on an executive team across multiple meetings. When the men came into the room, the women gave up their seats or left the room to find them chairs. They made their space smaller and crowded together to make space for the men. The men never reciprocated. They never got up when someone came into the room, and they never made themselves smaller. When women spoke at the meeting, they spoke softly and often started with language like, I just have something small to add, or you can take it or leave it, or using just, like, quick, all of this kind of small language. So it actually was confusing, and it reduced the power of the female suggestions, which were more often on target than the men's suggestions. These women, the leaders of the company, modeled this behavior to the men and the other women in the company. And again, the ripple effect. So my client, Vanessa, is an attorney at a nationally ranked law firm. I noticed that she apologized to me for the smallest thing, so I asked her to observe and count how many times she minimized or apologized during her day. When I saw her the next time, I asked her to reflect on her observation, and she actually burst into tears. She sometimes counted over 50 times a day that week, but worse, she realized that her middle school daughter was doing the same. She was crushed. She was visibly crushed. So if minimizing and apologizing are a habit that you relate to, this is what I recommend. Take a week and get curious. Log how many times you get small, speak softly, apologize or minimize your hard work, and then take some time to forgive yourself and commit to experimenting and practicing some new habits. This is one of the emotional ones that I find when people actually start doing this logging and noticing, they really start, it can be emotional about how much they're doing it. They don't realize it, and it's powerful. Pay attention to your nonverbals. Where do you give your power away? Even slouching, never choosing the head of the table when you walk in to the conference room, letting others speak over you, giving up your seat, they all show people a lack of power. And then the spoken and the written word, it's so powerful, and we do this so many times a day, and it adds up. It creates that kind of, collective way we give away power. So this, I only have a tiny suggestion. If I could just have a minute, maybe this isn't important, but you may have already thought of this. So this language, this little, tiny, small, quick, the language we choose to speak and write in emails can either give away our power or make us powerful. So the language we choose to speak and write in emails either gives away our power or creates power, makes us more powerful. So observe and correct your language and your tone. Be direct, be bold, care personally, but challenge directly. Okay, last one, guys. We're almost there. So whoever said, I just keep my head down and do great work? They'll notice, No one likes a bragger. What happens when women do great work but never advocate for it? Your excellent work is ignored. Everyone is busy and they're busier than ever. If you don't draw attention to your work, people don't know what you're working on, how hard you're working on it, and how successful your end product is. You can give credit away by always saying, "We had great success," instead of "I led my team to great success." And unfortunately, others learn to take credit for your work if you never speak up. I see this all the time. Over and over again, the people talking about what they are doing will surpass those with their heads down, not making time to show others what they are doing. When women cling to this habit, more men rise. You give power away, hoping others will notice. You give time away too. The data on this is incredibly powerful, guys. Men boldly self-advocate for average work. Men boldly self-advocate for average work. Women often have better ideas and do not self-advocate for work done over 100%. There's tons of data on this. So go out there, get bold. And again, the domino effect. To be a successful leader, you need to make sure your team's work gets recognized. Others suffer and will look for opportunities on other teams if their work does not receive sufficient spotlight. So my client, Rachel, felt like she did not belong at work. She was unsatisfied and felt underappreciated. And she felt underacknowledged for her long hours. In fact, she was so frustrated and surprised that her male peers seemed to be doing less work and getting more attention. Over the course of working together, we realized that she was uncomfortable advocating for herself. So it kept her safe, but it kept her stuck and completely unsatisfied. No successful company in the history of the world has created a product and then not told anyone. You have to do the same. I usually tell my clients to start small. And so one of my favorite things to say is in your weekly meeting with your boss, print a list of your wins and accomplishments and hand them over. Write your wins for the week or the month on your whiteboard at work so everyone sees it. And practice with your team. Every time you have a team meeting with the people who work for you, start the meeting with the wins and continue to do this, all these small ways to create your marketing department. Creating an elevator speech pays dividends. It can help you think more clearly about your future. It makes you more confident and prepared. It marks you as a serious player and someone to watch. So it's perfect for moving beyond the trap of hoping to get noticed. Elevator speeches are a must, and they should really be refreshed, in my opinion, every 6 months. And they can be created not just for yourself, but all for your major products and projects. So this is less than 60 seconds, but you should be able to kind of nail it with no ums, ands, buts. It's incredibly powerful. And the women that I see do this feel so much more confident and are really able to kind of boost up their marketing department. I realized that I swapped those. So I versus we. The data shows that women advocate for others more than themselves. So make sure you're taking credit for your work and leading your team, especially to your superiors. So take the we out of your elevator speech and be brave and bold. Own your great work. It's really, really important. So quick recap. We identified the habit or habits that keep you stuck. We internalized the positive value or the benefit of that habit and how our wiring, our conditioning, our culture, and our current reality keep us in our patterns. We also unpacked the cost of the habits to ourselves, others, and the domino effect our habits have on our careers. For each habit, we explored how to let go of the habit with reflections and experiments. And really today, right now, you can start to put these reflections and mini experiments into practice. So let's use the chat box one more time, and in less than 5 words, what is your biggest takeaway from our work today?
Well, we have already gotten so much appreciation for the great things that you've said already. But our first response is be mindful and have more confidence. Situation, behavior, impact. Examine and then experiment. The power of experiments. Knowing I don't have to have all the answers. Lead with your success. And observing and experimenting.
Awesome. That's great. That's so great. So here's what I recommend. Last couple comments. For sustainable and lasting change, first, increase compassion for yourself and others. And remember what got you here. Exactly, he said, is that remember that some of our habits come from our greatest strengths. Start with one habit or part of one habit. So you need to create small wins. Don't kind of wake up or go out after this and say, I'm going to end being a pleaser today. So make it a small thing that you start to tackle. And then don't do it alone. Recent research out of Northwestern recommends that women create informal and formal structures to support themselves in order for them to rise. It can be as simple as asking another woman that you work with to support you at a tough meeting, creating a women's circle at work, or hiring a coach. So when you let go of these habits, even one habit, it can create a significant headspace to be more strategic and creative at work. It allows your great work to be seen, and it helps you thrive and rise within your organization. We don't need to wait for institutional change. If we collectively do our personal work of shedding the habits that hold us back, it will create a shift. It will create a ripple effect that will support our teams, women at all levels, even daughters, and our next generation. But most of all, it will help you thrive and rise now. Thanks, guys. I'll take any questions if there are any.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Rebecca. I know I took a lot of notes just now, so I'm excited to see what questions we have. So the first one is, if I have a difficult supervisor and we don't have a great relationship, what are initial steps I can take to improve that relationship, but also show my confidence?
Yeah, so difficult supervisors are really hard and they can erode confidence really easily. I would choose to be direct as possible, and also to share your wins as much as possible. So use that experiment of sharing your wins. It will help build your confidence. So keep it on your whiteboard, tell your team, and And then don't be afraid to put it out there for your supervisor, even if it's, you know, a box that you highlight in an email or in your meeting with him or her. And then practice that direct conversation of asking for what you need. I think when we have difficult supervisors, we become afraid to ask for what we need, and you really need to be direct and not be afraid.
Thank you. Next question is, I took over a team from a colleague of mine that was a man, and we're not jiving so far. So I'm guessing that means the team that she took over. What are some steps to show that I want to collaborate and work well with them and am fine with starting from scratch, I think?
So I think I understand it is how do I create cohesiveness on my team that was previously run by a man. Does that sound right, Sarah Whitney?
Yes, it sounds like there's a little bit of pushback from the team.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think that's really normal, whether you take over from a man or a woman. I would try to use some more casual interactions to create some team cohesiveness, even if it's starting with a high-low at the beginning of a team meeting. So a high-low is when you go around and everyone talks about kind of their high point of the week and their low point of the week. And what I see this do on Teams, and there are tons of different tools like that that you can Google, or I'm happy to talk to you about how to use them. But you're creating team cohesiveness. You're showing everyone shows what they're proud of, but it also allows them to be vulnerable. And it allows you to be vulnerable and connect with them. And you know, you can choose what you share. If you feel like you need to project confidence and power, you can choose your high-low and create a shift. But it also creates that cohesiveness around the team. And there are tons of tools like that. But the thing I'm actually seeing, especially during this crazy COVID time, the research that I'm reading and what they're saying is that we've kind of let go of the casual relationships that create cohesiveness in teams. And so using some of those tools like a high-low gives everyone a chance to take a breath and get to know each other again. And that can be really powerful.
Great. Well, I think that is all the questions we have. There was lots of thank yous again, Rebecca. So I know that everyone's got a lot out of this presentation. And to those of you asking if this is recorded, this was a recorded presentation and you will get it very soon. And then I believe, yes, Rebecca's information is right there for those that were wanting that. So Rebecca, thanks again for sharing your wisdom and encouragement with us today. And thank you to our participants for being here and joining us. I just want to encourage you all to check out the career resources and events that we have both electronic and in person provided by the Vanderbilt Alumni Association. Our next webinar will be on May 27th with Hallie Crawford, and we're looking at LinkedIn and how this is a useful piece, especially when looking at remote work and just changing in your careers. Later this week, I will send a follow-up email with the archived link and a request for feedback, as well as any details that we mentioned today. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to myself or Rebecca. We're always looking to improve upon our offerings for alumni, so be in touch and let us know how we can support you. Thanks again, everyone, and have a great day.
Thank you.